All right, hello everyone. We are now up for the last talk of PyCon S 2023. Oh, it's going to come to an end. I hope it's been an absolutely amazing event for all of you, as much as it's been for us. We have here, last but not least, we have Simone with us, Simone Giacomelli. So Simone is an experienced senior software architect with 25 years in the computer software industry. He's skilled in backend development, web applications, agile methodologies, and mobile and cross-platform development. He has a passion for programming languages and software integration. His educational background includes an MSc in artificial intelligence from USI Lugano, a BSc in computer systems and network security from UNIMI Milan, and he believes in continuous learning and always be seeking for, to expand his knowledge and skills, which is something that I guess all of us share, because otherwise we wouldn't be in a conference like this. So big applause for Simone.
Thank you. Welcome to this talk about web development in Python all the way down. So you already had a small introduction about me, and I'm really passionate. The things I will show you in this talk I did in 6 languages, in C#, Rust, Pascal, then other like, I did this because I developed software for myself, and I noticed throughout all my years in different industries, I worked for banks, insurances, for healthcare systems, for like factory of milk and yogurt, foundries, iron foundries about artistic products, and so on. I saw many different things. And I do that, I feel lucky because I just enjoy it. So you should know also that I love pies. And what we are going to see in this talk is some waste that may not be immediately visible when we have different systems. Then I will give you a solution using Pyodide, and I will give you some repository to play around with the things we are going to see. And a couple of libraries that improve the web development in this context. And in the end, the question and answer session. What is something that I think should be solved in some frame? When we have different languages from the browser and the server, in the sense that there are 2 problems here. One is the network impedance. The other one is the difference between the 2 ecosystems. When we want to send and communicate between one another, we need to JSONify our payload, then bring it to the network. And on the other thing, we need to de-JSONify it and use it as it was originally meant it. Before going on, I'm just saying that we are not going to look at the usual traditional website lifecycle. We are not looking at that, like when you have a website and every link click will do a full reload. We are going to see as an SPA, where the initial website load, when you spin up your browser and type in the URL address, you will have the initial download of the program and the HTML that will live inside the browser. And from on there, the user interacts with the website, and the website updates itself because it has a clever program there, like you see Gmail and Google Maps. And when you click somewhere, maybe there will be an HTTP invocation and AJAX request, and you will get back your data. The context of this talk is an SPA. In some slides, you will see these keywords. Async await programming is quite everywhere. It's in Kotlin, C#, in Python, JavaScript. It's everywhere. I'm not going into that because it's another total talk. So just ignore those pesky keywords. Let's see the beast in the eye. Let's start with an example, like where we have JavaScript on the client, Python in the server. And we want to save a py in a database table on the server side. So we are going to call save py and with our arguments. The next thing to do is to create an HTTP request with a post. We need to know the string, magic constant, of the endpoint, and we are bunching together our parameters in a JSON string so it can be sent on the network to the server. And then we can also do some error checking. Here, we have the counterpart, where you have an example I wrote. I think it's Fast API or Flask, I don't remember. And what we are doing is the opposite. We are reading our JSON request, and we are unpacking our things that we care about. And finally, we can save the py to the database. But let's see that I want the ID assigned to the record. I want to pass it back to the browser because of some requirement. What we need to do is to add it to the payload, and then on the other side, in JavaScript, we can read it finally. This is the final nail in the coffin, more or less. If we want a date to be added as an argument, again, we need to JSONify it in an agreed upon format, like an ISO string, pass through a string, then feed it to the server, and decode it. So you need to know, and another nice thing, if you want to do the reverse, you need to know the JavaScript API to parse it. Just to do that. So there is also another hidden waste here. You cannot use, or it's really difficult, the ID tools. You cannot use find usages. You cannot browse the code easily with the control click, or like the add parameter refactoring or reorder arguments. Those are all features inside the ID that are lost completely here. Agreed, we have tools that can lessen the burden of this, but the impedance, like renaming saved py to something else, you have a double work. I really enjoy programming, and I prefer to focus on things that I like. I feel this is boilerplate. When you have the freedom to choose which language to use on the server. Spoiler alert, we will put Python on the browser. Wouldn't it be awesome to being able to invoke the function like that. Like that, it's a little bit small, but it means it's like a local invocation. There is no, on the right, there is on some waste. It could be refactored now, but to make this possible, we need two ingredients. The first one is Python in the browser. Thanks to Pyodide, a project, a huge project, we can run a full interpreter in the browser. And it's a full C Python implementation, and so it's a real Python. It works also in Node.js, but in this talk, we are focusing in the browser. What I want you to remember from these couple of slides is that we can work with two Pythons. Who cares if one is a browser? We care, but it's one Python in the server and one Python in the client, in the browser. Because Pyodide lives in the browser, we have the same access to the web API. All the libraries you will see here, it's all written in Python. Just in www.py, we have 7 lines of JavaScript to load Pyodide, because it's not avoidable, but so because we are in the browser and we can access all the web APIs, all the JavaScript world without JavaScript, we also have the same limitations, like we are in the browser sandbox. What is WASM? Just one mention. It's a virtual machine that is primarily focused for the web, and it's fully embraced by the major browser. It's not just for the browser, but it's primarily. It came there, and like it works now on your phones. And it can, if you open a website that use WASM, and we have many compilers, C, for example, that targets WASM, but then many, naming one, it has a WASM target. It was possible to port C Python, thanks to the Pyodide team that did this huge job. It was possible to have Python in the browser. The second ingredient is the library I'm the author of, and it's hidden because you don't need to import it. It works behind the curtains. And let's see how this is possible, that we call this function, there is an useless level of indirection here, but so I could join the examples. Let's start with the server function. What happens is that we open our browser, we type the address of the application, and there is the initial load of all the stuff. This code will not be sent to the browser. What will be sent is something generated on the fly that's a proxy. A proxy is an intermediary that will do all the things we saw and we needed to do in JavaScript. Serialization, deserialization, and it's done transparently. So now we can call our function that looks like a local function, like we are in the same Python process. This technique is called RPC, remote procedure call. It's really old. It's everywhere, actually. But yeah, here is quite handy. Now, if you want to play with it, you can clone this repository. and you can fiddle with the thing. And I took some screenshot. I used the Bootstrap framework to make it more pleasant to the eye. And I'm not really an UI guy. And on the right, you can see a menu, all written in Python, all customizable. It's just a few lines of code. And here you can see a couple of examples where both uses RPC, but I want to mention on the right side the Excel button, because the library to create the Excel is present in Pyodide, it's available in Pyodide. We can create the Excel file directly in the browser. We don't even need the server. The SQL query uses the RPC. It's called like exec SQL that is run locally, but in the end, you saw how it worked. But this is a nice example of Pyodide. Some widget to show three stuff on the left, and then just again to reiterate on the potentiality of using Pyodide. You can access any API you want, any third-party JavaScript libraries. In this case, I wanted to show you an access to some esoteric web API, Bluetooth, very convenient. And let's see quickly how a project, this demo is organized. The first two folders are about common and remote. They will both send to the browser. Don't put secrets in it. And so the remote has the code that can run only on the browser, like the web Bluetooth thing. The thing that when you add some HTML element, yeah. In the common, we put those procedures like in the Excel example. If you have repetitive tasks that you do on Excel because you have the library both available in the server and in the browser in Pyodide, let's put that repetitive task that manipulates Excel files in the common folder, so you will have the freedom to use it from the remote of the server. Then the server, obviously, you will put the code like the MySQL access, the things you cannot do in the browser or you don't want to do in a browser. Yep. Now, www.py comes with a simple class, a widget. It's a very common concept in UI frameworks where you have reusable UI components. The nice thing is that it represents a bunch of HTML code, and you can compose it. So once you have a few widgets that does what you want, you don't even need to go back to JavaScript or the DOM or the document. Let's see a small example, like the calculator. It just do an addition, it's an example, and here we can see the HTML that compose this UI. I put a green box around the ID of the three text boxes, and I just wanted for you to know that this is a Python string. We could have put that in a HTML file, but we don't need to. And yeah, let's go to the next one, that is the Python. So the HTML is just below here, but didn't fit the slide. And what we have to do is extend the widget class and declare with the same IDs the HTML elements. We could also be more, if we have like an HTML table element, this comes all from the browser. There is nothing from myself, I mean. Then the widget API will call the after render at the right moment. And in the end, what happens is that when you type one character in the two boxes up, what will happen is that the calculate method will be invoked. And the addition will be made. And the result will be put in the UI. I want to point out that I use the RPC here, just for an example. And the addition is not made in the browser. It's really, if you remove the RPC, you can do with Python, like with the direct import of add. You even wouldn't know that it's remotely executed. Okay. For the developer experience, there are a couple of libraries that improve our developing in this context. The first one is WebAssembly. It's under the project of Pyodide. I'm the maintainer of it. And what it does is feed the knowledge of the web APIs to the IDE. So this is a package, a PyPy package, that you don't want at runtime. You don't need it at runtime. It's just at development time, so your IDE will know about inner HTML, document, window, and all those things. For example, document is a very important object in the HTML world, and without WebAssembly, you would not have that hint. But if you press enter now, as expected, we have the import for that. And if you press dot, you will have all the functions, properties, and default arguments about the overloads. And so WebAssembly is automatically generated by the Vue3C specs, and it generates a Python stub. The last library I want to show you about is inspired by XDist. By the way, what XVirt, I'm a co-author with Fabrizio Lamarca, and what it does is create tests out of thin air. You can invent tests that doesn't exist. It's used by www.py because when you want to run tests that runs in the browser, this is, for example, these are tests for the widget we saw before, but this would fail without the PyTest plugin, because you run and the code of Python tries to execute locally, but will fail because you are accessing things that are in the browser. So what this XVirt does with www.py is spin up a web server, spin up a headless browser, download the production and the test code, install PyTest, install the plugin, run the test, and give back the results to the IDE. So you can selectively run the tests like we are always used to do. I mean, sometimes we run all, but when you are developing, you want to focus somewhere. And then you can also have the stack trace, so you can click and go to the issue. www.py is a very young project, and so one thing is that it could benefit from compound types like data classes, pedantic. And then, because every time you load the initial page, the full Python interpreter needs to be loaded, it takes a few seconds. So an auto refresh would be a great addition to the library. Then the RPC, the remote procedural call, is without authentication right now. And it needs to be there so we can have user session and like anonymous API, authenticated API, and so on. The last one is the toughest, but because I enjoy development and debugging step by step, inspecting variables, I'm the lover of GDB, but command line development is very tough. So if somebody here or that looks this video want to go down there, please contact me. This is a very deep topic. So I hope that with this talk I gave you another perspective and a different way when your requirements can allow it, and you can decide to put Python in the browser with the loading times and others. I hope, by the way, to have given you some food for thoughts. Yeah? Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Simone. Well, that was great. So now, after a round of questions, please raise your hand.
Hi. First, thank you for the talk. I mean, it's really interesting what you're doing with that. I haven't even thought about using Python on the browser, never. You always use JavaScript on the project that I work on. We use Flask. And I just wanted to ask you, this is not a replacement for JavaScript on the browser. This is just to add some more functionality that we could use between Python on the server and the client side, and also use JavaScript, or is this really, or could be a replacement for JavaScript at some point where you can also use events or stuff like that in the browser from Python?
So it's true both. This can replace entirely JavaScript, because instead of writing JavaScript, you are writing Python, but you have the same access as JavaScript. There can be other consideration, but personally, I try to stay away from JavaScript, but I integrated with it with Pyodide because it's fully interchangeable. I used like D3.js and other libraries directly from Python. I used that, so graphs and things. So you can use just Python, or if you have pre-existing JavaScript you want to integrate with, you can use it. On the website of Pyodide, there is a great documentation about interoperability about the two words.
Thank you.
Hello. Thanks a lot for your talk. So I wanted to ask you, I have nothing to do with front-end, so my question might be a dumb one. But is there a trend at the moment trying to remove this difference between server and client? Because we saw another talk in this PyCon that had a similar, or at least it seemed to me, a similar line of thought. So my question is if this
What was the talk?
The one about live view? The one about live view?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, basically he was suggesting to use WebSockets to remove HTTP calls back and forth. So my question is this a trend in front end, removing this barrier, or has this always been there?
Yeah, the second one. For me, I mean, it's my opinion, and the impedance between two systems was always something to overcome. In fact, RPC, I don't know if it comes from the 60s, like remote procedure call is baked in all operating system. In Linux, you have a port open everywhere, and in Windows, and yeah, RPC is really there. And it's something that usually stays just in your feet. So I don't think it's a current trend, but just a recurrent topic that we want to stay away. For example, this would not apply if you are writing APIs for a third party. You don't know which language you are going to use. So I would say it's an eternal problem that will be here for us forever. I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The talk was brilliant. We have been working a lot with frameworks like Streamlit, Solara. Now we are tinkering with React Py. We work mostly on visualization and prototyping application with machine learning and data. I'm thinking about can you highlight some use case that can benefit from this approach rather than using some of these frameworks?
Yeah. So this sixth language, I did it in Kotlin, Dart, etc., came out because for a customer, I used Streamlit. But we had an issue because we were managing a huge data set and we needed a super high responsive application. And then a friend mentioned to me PyScript, but PyScript uses Pyodide. Then I discovered Pyodide and I went there. Going back to use case. The use case is that with this one, I can create a very reactive UI. With the Streamlit user experience, it's difficult. I mean, you cannot make it actually. At the point I was using it. And what I did, and this is, Streamlit uses Tornado, it's a web server from Facebook. So I put a hole in Tornado to stream the two handlers I need here to being able to have this hole, because the previous iteration was in TypeScript and I needed to do APIs in Python and use those APIs in TypeScript in a Streamlit component. No thanks. I have both Python and Python now.
Yeah. And regarding interoperability, do you think it would be a good idea to use some of these JavaScript frameworks for deep learning, for compile of models in the, because right now, if we have to put a model with a very, very, very quick latency, with zero latency, we have to implement that into JavaScript. But I could see just having the model loaded in the JavaScript framework, but interacting with the common Python APIs.
Very interesting. Obviously, it's a very deep topic, but it depends, because you have machine learning. You're talking about machine learning,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, machine
learning. So you have many machine learning models that runs in the browser, and depending on your security privacy requirements and also the availability of such models to be run there, I would say, yeah. Personally, the biggest downside is the loading time. It takes a few seconds. And then I thought there was a second, but I'm not remembering that, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right, any other question?
Thanks, Simone, for the talk. Really enlightening. I have two questions, if I may. The first one is, is PyTest XVIR replacing somehow Selenium, or you can use both for testing this kind of applications? And the second one is, I may have some concerns about security. Dealing with logging, out, etc., using this code in the browser. So how it works? Is there any tip or libraries that we can use to deal with security, for example?
So the first question was about, is PyTest replacing some role of Selenium?
Yes, XVIR. So if you span the browser...
XVIR, okay.
Yeah.
Nope. Actually, instead of Selenium for the automated testing...
So you're using XVIR?
Playwright.
Okay.
It's like, it's in the same segment of Selenium. But I use a lot Selenium, but Playwright was really easy. And so actually XVIR is just a framework that can execute tests remotely, but are not executed locally. The second part was about authentication. This stack is implemented, the most complete stack I did, it was in Kotlin, and it's done like in the usual way with tokens, JWT. So if you are interested, please come on the repository. And yeah, so for authentication, you saw that my idea of the implementation is like to create a class in the RPC. So you will have the user where it's, if you want to use it, good. And yeah, I have a few ideas for that, but right now, currently it's not in the code.
Right, we have maybe time for one more question. Well, a question anywhere over there?
And then write me, I'm super passionate about this topic, so.
Congrats, Simone, about the talk, very interesting. I only one question about the performance. No, like for example, another solution, more conventional, like normal REST and JavaScript. And if you want to say something about that, thank you.
The performance, so we should think about two aspects on the Pyodide side, because for the rest, we don't have any differences about. The first one that comes to mind is the speed of the interpreter. I think I saw some statistics on Pyodide, and I know it has some penalty. And I think that is due because of the super optimization we have with the compiler that targets ARM, Intel, and now we need the same optimization with the WASM. And I'm not aware of other aspects, but you have that. And the second aspect about performance would be between the interaction between the WASM Python that manipulates the DOM, and actually I have no idea about if there is some, I used to think there was something very heavy downside in performance, but I'm not sure anymore. So I would, yeah.
All right, great. So that is a wrap. Big ovation once again for Simone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, guys.